3 months. 3 months since the day Adara said, "I do," under the night sky. Her world had turned into a symphony of happiness and purpose. The compass-shaped necklace from Emeka always rested peacefully on her chest, a constant reminder of the journey she had taken and the future they were building together. That future was named the Bloom Project. It was Adara's idea, nurtured with Emeka's resources and faith. A comprehensive training and scholarship program designed to discover young talents from disadvantaged backgrounds, especially within the Nigerian immigrant community, and give them the opportunity to shine in the hospitality industry. One evening, after a long day working on the project's plans, they sat together on the windy balcony of the penthouse. Papers and diagrams were scattered on the table. "Can you believe it?" Adara whispered, her eyes glowing brighter than the city lights below. "Just a year ago, I was worried about being fired. Now, we're about to change the lives of so many people." Emeka took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "Not we, Adara. You. You are the heart of this project. I'm just the lucky one standing beside it, watching it beat." He gently kissed her temple. "As long as I have you by my side, I'll never fear the night." But the night came, not from the outside, but from within. The boardroom of Cole Estates was tense like a taut string. 12 senior executives sat around the long wooden table, eyes fixed on Emeka. On the table lay a multi-billion-dollar merger contract with a hospitality tech conglomerate. It was a bold step, a gamble that could take Cole Estates to a new level and secure endless funding for the Bloom Project. Emeka, who hadn't allowed himself a single day of rest since the Baba Tunde incident, looked pale. He had worked day and night to fortify the company, to build an unshakable fortress, a safe haven for Adara. He picked up the pen to sign the contract. The entire room held its breath, but his hand trembled. A sharp, ragged breath escaped his chest. The pen slipped from his grip, hitting the table with a piercing sound in the silence. And before anyone could react, Emeka's body collapsed forward, slamming onto the glossy surface. Chaos erupted. Screams of horror. Chairs shoved violently backward. David, his loyal assistant, rushed to his side, his face drained of color. "Call an ambulance. Now." An hour later, Adara rushed into the hospital hallway, still wearing her uniform from the project meeting. The smell of disinfectant and the suffocating urgency filled the air. Doctors moved quickly. Machines beeped endlessly. And through a small glass window, she saw him. Emeka, the man who had always stood strong, now lay motionless, pale, covered in wires. The diagnosis fell like a sentence: acute heart failure due to stress. The doctor explained he had pushed himself too far, overworked, ignoring every warning sign. He was stable, but still in a coma. No one knew when, or if, he would wake up. Adara stood outside the ICU, fists clenched, tears streaming down her face. The man who had carried her through every storm now lay helpless behind cold glass. And suddenly, the empire they had built, the dream they had nurtured, all collapsed onto her shoulders alone. The Cole Estates boardroom had never felt so cold. This time, Adara stood at the end of the long table, facing a row of expressionless faces. The men and women in power suits, those who used to greet her politely when Emeka was present. Now, he wasn't there. Mr. Sterling, chairman of the board, who had once demanded Emeka keep his distance from her, cleared his throat. "Miss Okoro, thank you for coming," he said, his tone courteous but devoid of warmth. "As you know, Mr. Cole appointed you co-director of the Bloom Project. However, given his sudden condition, we need someone to represent his shares and voting rights." "I will," Adara said, her voice small but firm. A few eyebrows rose. One executive, with ties to the Adebayo family, leaned forward. "With all due respect, Miss Okoro," he said condescendingly, "you are not a trained executive. You have no corporate management experience. Cole Estates is facing the greatest crisis in its history. We need a seasoned leader, not an inspirational story." Adara drew a deep breath. Her heart pounded, her voice trembled slightly, but her spine remained straight. "Maybe I don't have experience with power suits and spreadsheets," she began. But I do have experience with survival, with service, with leading when no one is watching. I know this company from its very foundations, from the floors I used to scrub to the guests I used to serve." Silence enveloped the room. She continued, eyes fixed on those judging her. "And if you're worried about image, let me remind you. This entire project, this company's future, was born from a single image, a cleaning girl who rose above. And the world still remembers that." Her words struck something. They silenced immediate objections, though skepticism lingered. Adara left the boardroom, her heels echoing against the marble floor. Her back was straight. She wasn't trying to become Emeka. She was stepping into her own light. Because this storm would not destroy her, it had handed her the wheel. As Adara walked down the corridor, weary and alone, she nearly bumped into someone waiting there, Kemi Adebayo. She was dressed surprisingly simply in a cream blazer and trousers. No glittering jewelry, no usual arrogance. Her face serious, even slightly concerned. Adara froze, stunned. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about Emeka," Kemi said evenly. "And I know those people in that room. They're like sharks smelling blood." Kemi stepped closer. "You kept your word. You didn't use that evidence to destroy me. Now, it's my turn to repay the debt." She looked straight into Adara's eyes. "You're going to need help. Not Emeka's kind of help. A different kind. The kind only someone who's been in the mud can understand. Believe it or not, right now, I'm the only one who can help you." Adara stared at Kemi, her skepticism as visible as a wall between them. "Why should I trust you?" Kemi didn't flinch. "You don't need to trust me," she replied bluntly. "You just need to use me. I grew up in their world. I know their language, the polite lies, the knives hidden behind smiles. I studied public relations before fame blinded me. I know how to kill a rumor, how to spin public opinion, how to look strong even when you're trembling inside. I can be your weapon, or you can let those sharks tear you apart alone. The choice is yours." Adara's reason told her to refuse. But her survival instinct, forged through years of hardship, whispered otherwise. She was alone. And Kemi was right, she didn't know their rules. "All right," Adara finally said, her voice cold. "But listen carefully. This is not friendship. This is a contract. One lie, one hidden agenda, and the contract is over." A smirk flickered on Kemi's lips. "Fair enough." And just like that, an unlikely alliance was formed. The girl from the mud and the girl who once threw mud at her, now standing on the same side. The first day Adara stepped into Emeka's office as acting executive felt surreal. It was a vast, minimalist space overlooking Crestwater Bay. Everything was neat, powerful just like him. But now, his leather chair stood empty. Whispers followed her down every hallway. Does she really think she can do this? This must be temporary. Poor Mr. Cole. Adara ignored them all. She had no time for their doubt. Every morning before going to the office, she went to the hospital. She sat by Emeka's bed, holding his lifeless hand, telling him everything. She spoke of complex financial reports, tense board meetings, the tough decisions she had to make. It became her ritual, her moment of weakness, where she found strength in his silence. "I'll protect it, Emeka," she whispered each day. "I promise." The work was a sheer cliff. Adara spent nights reading and studying. She learned contract clauses, market analysis, corporate strategy. In one meeting, she misused a financial term and was publicly corrected by a board member. Instead of shrinking, she calmly admitted, "Thank you for pointing that out. I'm still learning, and I value your input." Her honesty left him silent. News of Emeka Ojo's illness spread quickly through the business world, and it reached the predators. At Orion Group headquarters, a tower of glass and cold steel, Mr. Thorne and Miss Reed studied a chart on the screen. "Emeka Ojo has finally shown weakness," Thorne said, his gravelly voice like stones grinding. "He was a veteran, defeated many times by Emeka. Cole Estates is fragile. The king has left the chessboard." Miss Reed, a sharp-eyed young woman with a deadly charming smile, sipped her espresso. "And they've left a pawn in his place, a waitress." This is the chance we've been waiting for. Send a greeting, Thorne ordered. Let her know the real sharks are circling. That greeting arrived 2 days later. Adara was reviewing HR files when her assistant announced unexpected visitors, Mr. Thorne and Miss Reed of Orion Group. They came unannounced, claiming to offer condolences. They met in the grand lobby. Their words were polite on the surface, but each carried invisible blades. "What a tragedy," Miss Reed said, dripping sympathy. "We've always admired Mr. Cole. And you too, Miss Okoro. Keeping things running smoothly at such a time is remarkable." "Thank you," Adara replied, calm-faced. Thorne cut in. "But let's be honest, Cole Estates is a heavy crown. Especially for someone with your background." It was an insult wrapped in concern. Adara clenched her fists. "My background taught me to carry burdens heavier than a crown," she retorted coolly. "Thank you for your concern. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run." She walked away, leaving her enemies' smiles frozen. That confrontation confirmed one thing: the war had begun. Cole Estates' annual gala was just 2 weeks away. The board wanted to cancel it. "Throwing a party while our CEO lies in the hospital is a terrible idea," Mr. Sterling argued. But after consulting Kemi, Adara thought otherwise. Canceling shows weakness. Kemi insisted in a private meeting. "It screams panic. But if you still host it and turn it into an event honoring Emeka's vision, you'll project strength. This is your stage, Adara. Own it." Adara decided. The gala would go on. It wasn't a party, it was a declaration. On gala night, the hall glittered under chandeliers. The city's most powerful figures gathered, including Thorne and Reed, watching Adara like hawks, ready to witness her failure. Backstage, Adara's heart pounded. She wore a royal blue gown, simple yet commanding. Kemi stood beside her, for once looking nervous. "The whole world is watching you," Kemi whispered. "Don't let them see fear." Adara drew a deep breath, Emeka's image in the hospital filling her mind. She wasn't doing this for herself. She was doing it for him. Her name was announced. The stage doors opened. Adara stepped into the spotlight. The stage lights converged on Adara. An entire hall full of powerful people held their breath, waiting. In the distance, Mr. Thorne and Miss Reed of Orion Group watched her with mocking eyes, certain she would stumble. Adara took a deep breath, drawing strength only from Emeka's image. "Good evening," she began, her voice resonant, clear, unwavering. "My name is Adara Okoro. Not long ago, I scrubbed the floors of this very building. Tonight, I stand here helping build the values it represents." Gasps rippled through the audience. Cameras flashed in rapid bursts. She continued, "This is not a fairy tale. I was not saved by a prince. I was seen by a man who believed dignity does not come from status, but from how we treat others." Her gaze drifted into the distance, as if speaking to Emeka himself. "And he taught me that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. That is why," she declared passionately, "tonight, I am proud to officially announce the Bloom Project. A comprehensive scholarship and training platform for disadvantaged youth across the nation. Because the next Adara Okoro should not have to wait for a miracle to be discovered. She or he deserves to be prepared." The hall erupted in thunderous applause. Tears glistened in some eyes. Even the harshest investors nodded in approval. Adara hadn't just delivered a speech. She had told a story, her story, and it touched every heart in the room. In the corner, Thorne ground his teeth. "That girl," he hissed to Reed. "She's not just holding the empire, she's expanding it." Reed's eyes were cold as she watched Adara surrounded by praise. "Then we change tactics. If we can't scare her, we'll bury her." Days after the gala, Adara felt new momentum. Investors called to pledge support. Employees looked at her with genuine respect. She had proven herself. She spent mornings at the hospital with Emeka, telling him about the gala's success, and afternoons running the company. She began to believe she could truly do this. But peace was only an illusion. One morning, while reviewing emails, a new one appeared. its subject screaming, "Urgent internal leak, resign before it's too late." It came from an anonymous address. Adara's heart skipped. She hesitated, then clicked. What she saw froze her blood. Attached were forged files, expertly doctored photos showing company funds transferred to a foreign account under her name, altered financial reports indicating massive unauthorized spending on the Bloom project, and most damning fake emails appearing to show her colluding with a supplier to embezzle company money. The signatures, logos, formatting, everything looked terrifyingly real. This wasn't a prank. It was a calculated strike, designed to utterly destroy her. Her hands trembled. The room spun. She couldn't breathe. For a moment, she was paralyzed, staring at the screen, crushed under the weight of lies. Then she reached for her phone, not to call a lawyer, not security, but the only person who could understand such cruelty. "Kemi," Adara whispered when the line picked up. "I need you. Now." 15 minutes later, Kemi arrived at her office. Seeing Adara's shattered expression, her smirk vanished. "What happened?" Adara silently turned the laptop toward her. Kemi's confidence melted into horror. "My God," she breathed. "They're framing you. And this looks like an inside job." Adara stared out the window, her voice icy. "They couldn't beat me in the open. Now they're sowing weeds in the soil I nurtured." "What are you going to do?" Kemi asked. Adara rose, fear replaced by cold resolve. "Find the truth. I want to know exactly who's behind this, not guesses, proof." She looked Kemi in the eye. "And then, we fight. They want to play with fire? I'll show them how deep my roots go. I won't burn. I'll grow through it." Kemi nodded, a flicker of reluctant admiration in her eyes. "I know someone. The best in the field." They met in a discreet cafe on the outskirts of town. Across from them sat Madame Nkoyo, an older Nigerian woman with wise eyes and commanding presence. She silently studied the files on her tablet. After a long pause, she spoke. "Whoever made this is skilled," her voice deep and powerful. "They used real fragments, old HR data, an outdated scanned signature from the resort archives. They stitched pieces of your life to forge convincing accusations." "Can we trace the sender?" Adara asked. Nkoyo nodded. "I tracked the IP. It came from a company device, from Cole Estates." Kemi's eyes widened. "An insider?" Nkoyo swiped further. "Yes. The user data matches a junior financial analyst, a man named Samuel." Adara frowned. "Samuel? I've never even spoken to him." Kemi clenched her jaw. "You didn't have to. Someone paid him. And one more thing," Nkoyo added, enlarging a code line. "These files were accessed by a third party before being sent to you. Through a foreign proxy server I happen to know it's tied to Orion Group." Adara finished, her voice firm. Nkoyo smiled faintly. "Bingo. The pieces fit." A thunderclap in Adara's mind. Thorne and Reed hadn't just tried intimidation, they had planted a bomb and were waiting to detonate it. Samuel was merely a pawn. Adara rose, her eyes clear, her fear gone. "No press conferences. No noise," she told Kemi and Nkoyo. "Gather every shred of evidence. When I strike, it will be the killing blow." That night, Adara walked into Cole Estates headquarters with the same calm she once carried, pushing a cleaning cart down the VIP hallways. People thought this empire belonged to Emeka. They were wrong. Adara was its roots. And she was done shrinking. Adara moved like a storm no one had foreseen. On Monday morning, she convened an emergency, private meeting with the Cole Estates Internal Ethics Committee. The members were surprised, but Adara held full authority. Emeka had once ensured that. Only a few key people were present. Adara, Kemi as advisor, the head of internal audit, and 2 senior legal officers. Samuel, the financial analyst, walked in, his face pale with anxiety. He still didn't understand why he had been summoned. Adara stood at the head of the table, silent for a moment, then spoke with a calm, steely voice. "In the past week, there have been efforts to fabricate documents tied to my name. The intent is to discredit me and destroy our training program. She turned toward the large screen. With a single click, Madame Koyo's full report appeared. The digital trail was displayed beyond dispute. Email headers, device IDs, login timestamps, file creation timestamps, IP addresses, and, finally, a video capturing Samuel's entire screen showing him exporting a falsified ledger entry. Samuel's face went ashen. Any resistance in him collapsed. Adara turned to him. "Do you deny this?" I was only following orders," he stammered, voice shaking. "It wasn't my plan. I was paid." Adara raised a hand. "By whom?" Samuel hesitated, then mumbled, "Mr. Thorne and Miss Reed, from Orion Group." The room fell silent. Kemi leaned forward. "They bribed a Cole Estates employee to ruin Adara's reputation and sabotage our program." The head of audit stood, face grave. "Miss Okoro, we will initiate disciplinary procedures immediately and report this to the authorities. You have our full support." Adara nodded. "Thank you. And one more thing." She produced a sealed envelope. "This is an official order. Terminate any pending negotiations with Orion Group and any of their subsidiaries. We will not build our future with serpents." No one objected. As Samuel was escorted out, Adara's gaze never wavered. This time, the trap was not for her. It was hers to use. Sunset threw golden streaks across the hospital window. Adara sat by Emeka's bed, gently stroking his hand. The machines still beeped in rhythm. She had just returned from the committee meeting. Her posture was straight, her voice composed. But now, alone with him, she allowed herself to relax. "They tried to take everything, Emeka," she whispered. "They tried to say I don't belong here." She looked at his sleeping face. "But I remembered what you said." She reached into her bag and took out a small folded note, the anonymous message she had first received years ago at the hotel. "For the girl who works with grace, even when the world is cruel." Adara smiled softly. "That was you, wasn't it?" At that moment, his hand twitched. A movement so slight it almost went unnoticed, but it moved. Her breath caught. "Emeka?" His fingers spasmed. His eyelids fluttered. She pressed the nurse call button, heart pounding. His moving, his waking up. Nurses and doctors flooded the room in seconds. The monitors beeped louder, more urgently. Then, Emeka's eyes slowly opened. At first clouded, they found the one face he always sought. "Adara," he croaked. Tears streamed down her face. She laughed through them. "You scared me." His voice was weak. "You kept the estate." She leaned closer. "Not only did I keep it, I made it stronger." A faint smile crossed his lips. "I knew you would." The doctor nodded. "He's stabilized. Rest is needed." But his back. Adara sat down, gripping his hand tighter than ever. The king had awakened, but the world had also witnessed something more terrifying than mere power. A woman who would not flinch when left alone in the jungle. 2 weeks later, Cole Estates was the talk of the business world. Adara Okoro had not only survived the smear campaign, she dismantled it, exposed the insider, and expanded the youth training program with fresh funding from international investors impressed by her integrity. And now she was about to do what Emeka had always wanted but never dared. A public town hall not for billionaires, but for the workers themselves. The press gathered in a wide courtyard. Above them, a banner read, "Dignity in Service, the Vision of Adara Okoro." Emeka sat there, still recovering, quietly in a wheelchair in the shade. Kemi sat beside him, now head of the company's social responsibility department. Adara stepped to the podium in a simple white shirt and slacks. Her voice was clear, unshaken. 2 years ago, she began, I scrubbed hotel floors and went home with blistered hands. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't invisible. But to the world, I didn't matter. She paused. Then someone saw me. But what if he hadn't? Would I still be down there? She looked out at the crowd, workers, young people, dreamers. I don't want the next Adara Okoro to wait for a miracle. I want her to walk into a system where her worth is already recognized. The crowd rose to applaud, not polite clapping, but genuine. Just as Adara's momentum peaked, Orion Group launched a final strike. They breached a third-party vendor server and leaked real internal files of coal estates. The board panicked and sought to control the damage. But at the emergency meeting, Emeka, now steady enough to stand with a cane, shook his head. "We don't fight darkness with more darkness," he said, looking at Adara. "You led this estate with integrity. Don't let fear turn us into its reflection." "What should we do?" Adara asked. Emeka turned to the board. "We publish everything." It was a reckless move, but Adara agreed. Truth can be painful, but it is undefeatable. That night, Coal Estates released a comprehensive transparency report to the public, every transaction, every record. The move sent shockwaves. Investors praised the courage. Critics called it revolutionary. Orion Group failed. When your house is built on truth, lies cannot shatter the windows. One quiet afternoon, as the sun began to set behind the skyscrapers, Adara and Emeka sat beneath the old oak tree in the courtyard of Coal Estates. No emergency meetings, no lurking conspiracies, only the gentle whisper of the wind through the leaves and the song of birds. "I never imagined peace could feel like this," Adara said softly. Emeka smiled, squeezing her hand. "You created it. With your own strength." She shook her head lightly. "No, we created it together." He held her hand, where the engagement ring still glistened like a promise. "What comes next?" he asked. Adara smiled. "We will teach. We will train new leaders. We will keep our roots deep." "And your father?" Emeka asked gently. Her smile faded slightly, but her voice remained calm. "Still in prison, but I still pray for him." Emeka looked at her with awe. "How can you hold so much pain and still bloom so brightly?" Adara looked up at the canopy. "Because pain taught me where the light is." He gazed into her eyes. "You've forgiven the world, Adara. But have you forgiven him?" She was silent for a long moment, so long Emeka thought she wouldn't answer. Then she stood, determination on her face. "I think it's time I tried." It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. No cameras, no screaming headlines, only the crunch of tires on gravel as a black car stopped in front of the Federal Correctional Center on the outskirts of town. Adara stepped out, clutching Ife's hand. The girl wore a yellow cardigan, her round eyes steady. She didn't know everything, but she knew they were here for someone who had once hurt her sister. Adara took a deep breath. The sun was warm, but her palms were cold. Inside the visitation room, Babatunde Okoro sat in a grey uniform, head bowed, hands clasped on the table. He looked smaller, thinner, quieter. Time and regret had stripped away his arrogance and anger. When Adara entered, he didn't raise his head. But when he saw Ife at her side, his eyes filled with tears. Slowly, shakily, he stood. "Adara," he whispered, "you came." She sat opposite him, Ife pressed close. "I wasn't sure I should," Adara replied softly. "But Ife has questions, and I believe in answers, not silence." Babatunde turned to the girl. "You've grown so much," he said gently. "You look just like your mother." Ife stayed silent, her small hand gripping Adara's. Babatunde looked back at Adara. "I'm sorry," he said, wiping his tears quickly. "Not just for what I did recently. For everything. For leaving when your mother was dying. For choosing shame over responsibility. For making you carry pain that should have been mine." Adara was silent for a moment. Then she leaned forward, her voice steady but soft. "You broke us," she said. "You broke Mother's heart. And you nearly destroyed me." He nodded frantically, tears running down his face. "But," she continued, "we healed ourselves. We found our own peace. And I came today not to give you comfort." He bowed his head, bracing for the worst. "But to give you something harder." Her eyes shimmered. "I forgive you," he gasped, unable to breathe. "Why? Why would you?" "Because I don't want to carry your weight anymore," she said. "I have dreams to build. And a little sister, who needs love, not bitterness." She slowly stood, taking Ife's hand. As they turned to leave, Baba Tunde staggered to his feet. "Adara," he called. She stopped. "Thank you," he whispered, broken and undone. "You didn't have to, but you did. You're so much stronger than I ever was." Adara looked back one last time. "I had to be strong," she said, "because you weren't there." Then she walked out, head high, spirit lightened. Ife looked up. "Are you okay, sister?" Adara smiled a real smile. "Now I am." And as they stepped into the sunlight outside the prison gates, Adara felt something she hadn't in years: release. True freedom doesn't always begin with escape. Sometimes, it begins with forgiveness. The morning sun rose gently over the city hills, casting golden light on the Rosemont Estate courtyard. White lilies lined the aisle. Golden chairs circled a marble fountain. The wind carried the music of a string quartet. But even the music hushed as Adara walked forward. Her wedding gown was ivory silk, soft and flowing. Her hair was pinned neatly, a silver hairpin glimmering. She walked alone not because she had no one, but because this path belonged to her. Every step honored her past. At the end of the aisle, Emeka waited, tears of joy in his eyes. Ife stood nearby as a flower girl, wearing a sash that read Future CEO. Kemi sat in the front row, quietly wiping away a tear. When Adara reached Emeka, he whispered, "You did it." She whispered back, "We did it." Vows were exchanged. Rings placed. The crowd rose. They weren't just witnessing a wedding. They were witnessing a prophecy fulfilled. That night, Adara stood on the rooftop. No photographers, no gowns. Just strings of lights and a purple twilight sky. Emeka joined her. "Feels like the end of something," he said. Adara shook her head. "No, it's the beginning of everything else." "You know what amazes me?" he asked. "You never let the mud drag you down. You turned it into soil to grow." Adara smiled softly. "And you, Emeka Ojo, you watered those roots." They stood in silence, looking out over a city they once saw from opposite worlds. Now, together, rooted, they bloomed. And that is the conclusion of Adara and Emeka's journey. Thank you for joining us through 3 films full of storms and emotions. If you loved this story of resilience, forgiveness, and love, don't forget to hit like to spread the message, and subscribe to see more powerful stories in the future. Once again, thank you for listening.